Okay, well, we do have one unfortunate announcement we have to make, is that Congressman Blumenauer was not able to make it today. We were really looking forward to have him, particularly because we had a rural member of Congress, Congresswoman Pingree, and for him to represent an urban area. We're really excited to bridge those links between urban and rural, but he actually had a really key committee meeting he had to attend, and so he sent his regrets. He did send two of his staffers who were happy are here listening to all the ideas, taking down ideas, and sharing ideas for the Farm Bill. And so I'm here as Representative Blumenauer. I am representing the Congressional Bike Caucus, which I've always been a fan of the work of the Congressional Bike Caucus. I believe he is one of the only members to ride his bike to the Capitol every day. So if you have any questions not only on food and farm policy, but on built environment, active transportation, and the health benefits of bicycling, I think that Representative Blumenauer, Democrat of Oregon, is the person you want to speak with. And in my role, standing in for the congressman, I just want to share something exciting that his office is doing. It's called Sing Your Own Farm Bill. And I have a few copies to pass out. I'll pass them to Garrett, and we could pass them maybe one per row, and people could just take a peek at them. I don't know if any of you have heard that some cities and states and areas have been issuing their own farm bill. So this is another way around the logjam, and a way that citizens can write their own farm bill. I saw that Congressman Farr encouraged everyone to write your own farm bill. And this is what people are doing. City of Seattle did it last round, and now Representative Blumenauer is encouraging everyone in Oregon to write an Oregon farm bill. And I think that there's a lot of other efforts underway around the country. So you can ask either of his staff about the Sing Your Own Farm Bill campaign and how you can participate. And again, he really sends his regrets, and we hope that he'll stay in touch with food and farm efforts, because we're really happy to have him. At this time, I would like to invite everyone to join our final plenary, our final Pecha Kucha plenary, and also give a few words on what this Pecha Kucha is. I had a lot of baffled expressions, and people were stressed out about the pronunciation, and it's really, all it really is, it's actually a presentation style that originated in Japan with visual artists who wanted to quickly show their work to other colleagues, and they didn't have a long time, nor did they want to have long discourses on their art. So they just created this, it's called 20 by 20 presentation style. So it's 20 slides at 20 seconds each. And we thought this would be a really great way to introduce new ideas to the Farm Bill, and also spark discussions before we have open time. So our last Pecha Kucha session happened before lunch, and we hope that you all had some good discussions. And this one is happening before the end. I hope that you'll get to either ask these panelists questions or ask each other questions, and really lead to exciting follow-up about how these ideas can get into the Farm Bill and influence it for the better. Are we all ready to go? Was there anything else? Any other announcements? Great. Well, with that, I think that our first speaker, will it be, I guess if we go according to the schedule, then it will be Jeremiah Lowry from the DC Food Policy Council on the role of food policy councils. Thank you so much.
Awesome. How's it going, everybody? I had a presentation in Rockville. I swooped down here. I was in an Uber. I actually put this together while I was in the Uber. And then afterwards, I got to do a rally at the White House. So it's been a really busy day. So bear with me now. My name is Jeremiah Lowry. I'm with the DC Food Policy Council. We're a council of 13 members representing different sectors. So restaurants. So 13 residents in the district represent different sectors of the food system: restaurants, urban gardening, food nutrition, labor, et cetera, sorry, not et cetera, but just like different sectors of the food system. We also have just like activists as well. As you can see, this is our first meeting of the Food Policy Council. And it was really big. We probably had about 200 people come out, 250 people. So it was absolutely amazing. This is what I represent, the labor part of the Food Policy Council. So we're working on a good food purchasing program right now. And I'm really going to try to connect the dots between a good food purchasing program and what it does and how it's related to the Farm Bill. As you can see, that one of the things the Good Food Purchasing Program does is really works on procurement. We're working on procurement issues right now for the DC school system. So that's directly connected to the Farm Bill, as you can see, because we want to really ensure that healthy meals are in the school. If not, then you got kids hungry. As you can see, this girl is smiling right now. So one of the things the Good Food Purchasing Program would do is would change procurement rules and regulations to ensure that all the kids are eating in the schools. Another thing it'll do will ensure that we actually also have healthy food in the school system, right? So a part of the Good Food Purchasing Program that we want to reform. As part of the Good Food Purchasing Program, we really want to change the way nutrition is done. Nutrition is done in the school system as well. As you can see, this is an example of what a healthy, if a healthy school lunch looks like, as opposed to what they want to put in the Farm Bill, pizza counted as a vegetable or whatever the case may be. One aspect of the Good Food Purchasing Program is ensuring that we have good animal rights legislation here in the district, and that's also really connected to the Farm Bill, because if they evaporate or eliminate a lot of the animal rights and safety, you won't get jumping goats who are very happy. So one thing we want to do with the Good Food Purchasing Program is ensure that maybe having a meatless Monday in the school system, and really ensuring that the food we procure in DC is at least somewhat sustainable for animals. We also want to make sure the food we're procuring in the district has adequate labor rights, because we don't want to revert back to before we had child labor laws, right? So we want to make sure that our workers are taken care of in the district. One thing they want to do in the Farm Bill, the Farm Bill also oversees a lot of the farm labor, and if they get their way up top, then we won't have workers who are proud to be doing what they're doing and able to demand better rights in their workplace. Another thing we want to do with the Good Food Purchasing Program is ensure that the food we procure into the city is environmentally friendly. One thing they're doing right now, as you can see on the national level today, Donald Trump signed an executive order to roll back a lot of the carbon regulations for the United States, and that means that a lot of the USDA don't have to take into account the carbon that's emitted into the environment when they're passing policies. So we got to ensure that the district is doing that, and that we're sourcing environmentally friendly food. One thing we also want is local, right? So we don't want school lunches to look like this once they're shipped into the district. We want to make sure that they're locally sourced from hopefully local companies as well. So that's what we're looking into with the Good Food Purchasing Program. As you can see, locally sourced. So we really want to work with small businesses, hopefully cooperative businesses in the district, so we can actually grow our small businesses here in DC. And on a national level, they really want to change the Farm Bill to ensure that big corporations are really controlling our local food. One thing you can do, this is really fast. One thing you can do is get involved. We have different committees. We have the Food Procurement Committee, which I'm on. We have the Food Nutrition Committee. We have the Labor and Local Business Committee. For the DC Food Policy Council, we have the Urban Ag Committee. So we have different committees. So no matter what your thing is in the food system, we have something for you. That's the DC Council. Right there. That's Phil Mendelson. One thing I believe we can do in these times is really control legislation and laws in our communities. And if they're not going to do it up top, we can do it down here. I believe DC can be one of the most progressive cities in the world if we start, and we can start by talking to our neighbors, we can start by talking to our community members, and we can start by getting organized. You know, there's a lot of exciting things going on. We can be like this, like me and my friend Josephine right there. We're like laughing. We're laughing and we're having a good time, you know. That's what the food system should look like, right? Like folks on the urban garden having a good time, and I think that's possible right there, you know. And the time is now. You know, we have a federal government that's acting very, very fast, and so I think we have to do the same thing. We have to get involved in organizations like the DC Food Policy Council. You can contact me. Here's my information. And there's a lot of, I'll end it. My slide is over. But I'll end it by saying, we got another Food Policy Council member right there. I'll end it by saying there's a lot of legislation that's going on right now in DC, and it's very progressive. We have the FEED Act. We have an urban ag bill, which we're calling the local farm bill here in Washington, D.C., that we're trying to implement in the city. We have bills to rapidly expand food co-ops in the district. We have bills to ensure that the district government is eliminating food deserts in the city. So there's a lot going on. And residents are getting organized because there are a lot of cuts up top. There's a lot of devastation up top, but there's a lot of hope. And there's a lot of opportunity right here in our neighborhoods. And so I really encourage folks, if you're a Washington, D.C. resident, Maryland resident, Virginia resident, get involved in the D.C. Food Policy Council. I could point you in the right direction. And let's make D.C. one of the most progressive cities in the world for our food system. Thank you.
Next we have Bill Wenzel from the Public Interest Research Group on government transparency and a few campaigns related with that. Would you like to be at the podium or standing, sitting?
Podium
Okay.
or sitting is fine.
Okay, let me take this back.
Should make it easier.
Probably back over here, if that works.
Slides until I'll kind of cue you on when we'll move it into it, if that's okay. Yeah, if that's all right with you. Yep. Good afternoon. I appreciate all of you being here, and I also appreciate the opportunity to speak to the group. I'm Bill Wenzel of the U.S. Public Interest Research Group. I'm the program director of their Food and Farming Systems program. This will be my sixth farm bill, so I'm fairly well experienced in farm bills, and I'm really happy that I have an opportunity to talk about transparency. The problem I had when I first was confronted with this format was, number one, what does Pokemon have to do with farm and food policy? And I couldn't come up with an answer to that. And the other issue that I had was, how do you talk about the lack of transparency, which is the major problem we have in farm and food policy, and put that in some kind of visual presentation. I failed miserably. You'll have to bear with me because I'm not going to be doing this strictly in the way that the format was asking us. As I said, this is my sixth farm bill. I was born and raised in central Wisconsin in the country. My great-great-grandfather and grandfather turned a barn on a family farm into a sausage processing business. It was Wenzel Farm Sausage. That business is there today. So all the time I was growing up, I was part of the agriculture system and the food system as it existed in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, which is quite different today. I've worked on a lot of different farm bill programs and issues, and the one thing I can say is that one of the areas we have to focus on is transparency. I mean, it's absolutely critical for not only the public to participate in the process as it was intended, but also from the perspective of making informed decisions on what is going on in our farming systems, how do we help and support, what do we want in farming systems, and if you don't know the bottom line and on what's really the situation with a variety of different programs, it's impossible to make those decisions and participate effectively. The consumer is increasingly becoming a loud voice in farm policy and in food policy. We're already seeing the impact in the marketplace, and it's because of the increasing awareness of health-conscious consumers who are using their food dollars to change the marketplace and focus on more transparency and more and more sustainability. We're seeing restaurants and institutional buyers and retailers and wholesalers responding, and entire supply chains responding with transparent menus, elimination of additives and preservatives, and increasingly hitting at sustainability issues such as the use of antibiotics. We're also becoming a much louder voice in the context of policy. We just celebrated the first year since we were able to come together as consumers and sustainable ag folks and environmentalists to basically defeat a bill that was being pushed by the farm and commodity groups that essentially would eliminate right to know on GMOs. We were able to beat back that bill in the Senate, and as a result, a bill on mandatory GMO labeling was passed. It wasn't all we wanted it to be, but I think it shows the power of the consumers, and a lot of what is driven the right to know is the fact that we just don't have transparency in what's going on the farms in this day and age, and how effectively that is impacting our food system, our environment, and our public health. So from a consumer's perspective, I think the lack of transparency allows government agencies, ag industries, producers to withhold data and information critical to informed decision making, and that data precludes public participation and enables groups withholding data to frustrate regulatory and statutory remedies that we're all talking about here today. And on top of kind of precluding our ability to get that data and information, we then use sound science to deny that there's problems out there. I'm going to quickly go to two issues to illustrate my point. GMOs. GMOs first were commercialized back in the 1990s and 2000s. I was participating in the discussion on what we needed to know as environmentalists, consumers, farmers. On those issues, we felt that what was going on in terms of commercialization and regulatory process was cursory. We weren't getting substantial environmental impact data. We weren't getting anything in terms of impacts on food safety, and as a result, new varieties of GMOs were just being commercialized and put forward. And that's kind of the first, no, that's the second group of slides. As early as 2002, there was a study that came out by the National Academy of Sciences that basically said in order to adequately regulate transgenic plants, we need to increase transparency, we needed to enhance peer review, more public input, we have to finding confidential business information it hampers external review, transparency in decision making, and in order to have a proper regulatory system, we needed to address all those issues. 15 years later, we're still in the same place. We don't have adequate information on what is happening in the environment. We're trying to decide whether or not we should be re-registering products like Roundup with Monsanto, and we're doing it on the basis of public relations campaigns and a lot of misinformations. So from my perspective, that's one example of why we need more transparency, and we need to really push hard in making that available to all of us, not only to consumers. One other example is antibiotic resistance. We are now witnessing the loss of effectiveness of some of our most important life-saving drugs. As many of our experts in health professional fields have indicated, that we are entering a post-antibiotic era. We know that 70% of the antibiotics, the medically important antibiotics, are used in livestock and poultry production. We know that routine use of antibiotics ends up in creating antibiotic resistance bacteria, and yet we are in a situation where we don't have any on-farm data. We don't know the contribution of agriculture to this real threat to public health. And as a result, we really can't get to solutions that are desperately needed in order to save antibiotics. I've got to wrap it up there. I didn't get to the Farm Bill, and I guess my message to all of us is that we all look to be very active and an advocate for the specific programs we care about, but we do have to take the time to make sure that as we're advocating for those programs, we make sure that we demand of policymakers that a more transparent process is put in place so we can make informed decisions. Thank you very much. My apologies for running out.
I know this is a tough format because we all love the material so much, but I think it's also an exciting way that we can introduce a lot of ideas at once. Our next speaker is Dr. Joe Leonard, and I just wanted to give a few more words of introduction because when I first heard that he had been appointed by President Obama to serve as the Assistant Secretary of Civil Rights as a PhD in Civil Rights History, I was very impressed that we were really having an academic to policy link was being made by the President at the beginning of his first term. So I really wanted to make sure that we had Dr. Leonard here, and this sort of marriage of academics and policy, which he's exemplified through his career. So, Dr. Leonard.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nina. I appreciate that. Okay, give me 1 minute before we start the lightning round. I want to thank the Berkeley Food Institute, and I want to thank American University for sponsoring this event. I have to also thank Nina for her kindness and making sure I got here, and understanding that I might have something to lend to this wonderful event. I have to pay homage to my colleague Janie Hipp, who did literally a generation's worth of work for the Office of Tribal Relations when we worked together. I'll never forget your spirit, and that's the first thing I tell you. I love your spirit, and I still do. And I want to thank two of the CBOs who we worked very closely with, Mr. Burkett from Mississippi and Rudy Arredondo from Maryland. So thank you all for being here as well. It's important that you all are here. One more minute before the lightning round. I'm representing Stoic Creek LLC. We are a LLC that works in diversity and inclusion in the agriculture sector, and it's important to say that. I also thought it was important that Bill said that in his presentation about the lack of transparency in the Farm Bill. I have historically worked on SCHIP, the reauthorization for SCHIP. I worked on the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. Bill, sadly, this is only my 4th Farm Bill. But one of the things I've had to tell communities of color frequently is that it's not transparent for everyone, not just you. And too often they feel that it's just those individuals. I did have to make a slight adjustment as far as I was concerned. The title of this panel is Research, Extension, Education, and I needed to add and people. So my 3 pillars of my comments will be focused on 3 things. 1, we need to feed an additional 3 billion people in the next 30 years. 2, there are only 35,000 college graduates in agriculture every year, and we need 55,000. to work in this field so we can feed an additional 3 billion people in the next generation. And lastly, something that I've always tried to utilize in working in civil rights and diversity and inclusion, that is one of Churchill's famous quotes, and that is, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. Okay, so with that said, we can start. Jeremiah, you did an extraordinary job. I'm not going to do as good a job as you two. Okay, that's one. So we're going to go to two. One, you have to understand USDA has 100,000 employees spread across 2,200 counties in the United States. It's a department that was founded in 1865. We are not new. Many of the departments in the federal government have been founded in the 1940s, 50s, 60s. This is a very old line, huge industry. When we came on board in 2009, there were 273 different programs or grants. There are 343 different programs or grants now. In order to generate additional graduates, we're going to have to provide monies and scholarships. We're going to have to incentivize in communities that we heretofore have not incentivized in. That Representative David Scott of Georgia has sponsored the concept of repayment of student loans. Kids are listening to this. If you saw anything about Bernie Sanders and how he became credible, it was repaying student loans. It's vital. I would say the same to pursue a course in agriculture. I'd say the same thing about this slide that I said about the last, but this is focused on the 1994s and the 1890s. We have existing mechanisms to provide funds, and I'd encourage increasing the formula funding for these, most especially in the 1994s. We have to do that. If we really want to increase the number of persons participating in agriculture, we must do that. Urban gardens, we're going to have to promote healthy choice options, food promotion steps. It knocks out urban blight, and frankly, it's aesthetically pleasing. Too often times, if you go in certain food deserts, the food deserts aren't going to look pretty, and it's just blight everywhere. And 10 to 15 years ago, those gardens would have only been in areas of affluence. Now you see them in more different areas. Okay, I'm jumping to this. This is microloans. Microloans are vital because when this administration came on board, many of the complaints that we received were because people didn't have access to funding. We created a structure which people did not use their credit history. You used collateral. We're going to have to go. We started off with $35,000. We moved it up to $50,000. I would recommend the next farm bill it goes to $75,000. There's not another entity in which this occurred. Funny thing about it, I'm from Texas. I'm a sixth-generation Texan. Watermelons and cantaloupes. Many people of color in Texas specifically, Delaware does a lot of watermelons and cantaloupes, is not covered by RMA insurance. It's not covered by RMA. So we're going to have to put what many people of diverse backgrounds utilize and cover them in insurance practice. I think it's covered in that, but it's not covered in RMA, and people don't know really the difference between the two, and it goes back to the education, promotion of education that others were talking about. 1890 universities. I wanted to bring up the 1890 universities because half of the 1890 universities don't receive half the money that they're supposed to get every year because there has to be matching funds for the state. The irony is that every 1862 in that state receives the matching funds for them, but the 1890 rarely does. So if you're talking about $140 million a year, only $70 million goes before to that, and the problem lies in I'll finish that. This is important, 2501. This administration fought to keep 2501 in the budget. Last year it was only about $8.5 million. It was one time it was 20. It was zeroed out a year, maybe two. That has to be $50 million in order to have the intellectual bulwark in order to do the work that's necessary. It has to increase in the next farm bill. Farmers markets, one of the great things that I appreciate about this administration under Secretary Vilsack is the proliferation of farmers markets outside of well-to-do areas. In fact, I did a farmers market with our meager funds in the Office of Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights in a food desert in New Orleans in the 9th Ward. I don't know that spirit and this administration felt the need to go there, as we've done in Ferguson and Baltimore. Junk food versus healthy food. Junk food versus health food. I gotta remember that. Okay. Trade surplus. All of this has to do with trade. All of it has to do with trade. That's going to be the first thing the Trump administration really needs to understand, because every country in this world isn't going to buy the software from Microsoft. Every country in this world will buy the food the United States provides, because we have been the breadbasket of the world for the last 200 years. The trade surplus is vital, and everything to encourage the trade surplus must be continued. And to wrap up, I've appreciated the last 8 years of the Obama administration. There is a lot left that we have to do. At no point does this stop. You pass the baton off from one administration to the next, and hope that when you've had this seat, you did as best you could. I'm very proud that the Obama administration, led by Secretary Vilsack, we went places where there had never been a USDA official before. I went to 18 of the 1994 tribal colleges. We went throughout the country in order not to be transparent, Bill. We had to let the people know about things they had never applied for. Generally, people of color only apply for about 7 things. Again, I said we had 273 different programs. So what we need to do is encourage people to apply for things they'd never applied for, frankly, because no one had ever told them. And it was hard to let people know that USDA cared about them, because it's a low-line department. But I can tell you that we did a generation worth of change, Janie, and I say that to you all the time. And I know it. The problem is we still got about 30 or 40 years to go. I'm not going to say anything negative about the Trump administration, because everyone in this room, it's in all of our interests for them to succeed. For if we don't succeed, the breadbasket of the world closes and the world doesn't succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there enough enthusiasm outside the titles that we can try to figure out a way to get it in the titles? Thank you very much. Next up will be Dr. Sabine O'Hara, the Dean of the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences at University of District of Columbia. Welcome.
You got it. That's why we call it causes. Okay. That's a lot easier. Okay. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to speak to you about our work here at the University of the District of Columbia. We're busy at work implementing what the Food Policy Council envisions us to do. We're an exclusively urban land-grant university, because last I checked, the space of the District of Columbia is urban and a little bit peri-urban, so that's the focus of our work. There's one slide missing, but that's okay, I guess. Do you have the right one? You sure? Can I just check real quick? No, you don't have the right one. Because we still have that messed up slide in there. Sorry about that, folks. We've had trouble with getting my Mac to convert to this system, and it looks like it didn't save the right one. Okay, so I'm going to have to improvise. How's that? Okay, so like all land-grant universities, our mission is to build capacity. So what's that about? It's certainly about jobs. It's about new business startups, and you heard some new business models, cooperative models. It's about improving food and water security, bringing the farm, the food production, close to where the consumer is, and using new technology to do so, to grow a lot of food on very small spaces, and to train the next generation of farmers, which has to include urban populations, because we need more farmers. And so some of the entry points into farming may be very different than they have been. It's all about decentralization, and it's all about integrating the entire chain of the food system. And this was supposed to be our urban food hubs model, but as you can see, the Mac doesn't cooperate with the others, so here it goes. It's about producing the food, it's about food distribution, it's about food preparation and adding value and addressing nutritional needs, and it's about closing the loop. and recovering waste and water runoff to reinsert what we have considered waste as inputs, as resources, back into the food system. And so we define our urban food hubs as hubs that consist of those 4 components. So food production in urban settings looks very different than what we've known about farming. We farm on a 20,000 square foot green roof at the corner of Van Ness and Connecticut Avenue. We have raised bed gardens in Ward 7 and Ward 8 and Ward 5. We have aquaponic systems and hydroponic systems on 4 urban food hubs in the district, where we use growing food in nutrient-rich water rather than in soil, because in many of our neighborhoods, soil contamination may be an issue. And it's about food preparation, value added, so training people in another niche of the value added entrepreneurship chain, turning the tomatoes and peppers into salsa and into pickles and so forth, using that as a way of improving information about nutritional health, but also about food safety and sanitation. And we do that for all age spectrums. Food distribution was mentioned as a very important issue, and so we're really re-looking at the food distribution system, farmers markets, but also food trucks, direct marketing contracts with ethnic restaurants. You've already heard my colleague Yao Afanchao earlier on our ethnic foods initiative, niche markets and community-supported agriculture and other collaborative models. The price point conundrum is real. If you're producing for high revenue, you're producing for high-value restaurants, but that doesn't improve the nutritional health of low-income neighborhoods. So we've got to address this. And then it's closing the loop through composting, biodigestion, alternative energy, rainwater harvest, drip irrigation instead of surface irrigation to cut down on evaporation, rain gardens to address increased permeable surfaces. This is where urban agriculture becomes a partner with green infrastructure. And so here are some of our locations. We're on our 4th urban food hubs. This is our Van Ness campus, 20,000 square feet of food production on a retrofitted roof with a hydroponic system, an aquaponic system, small scale down on the ground, using innovative technology that was invented by one of our environmental science professors that uses molecular spin to aerate the fish tanks instead of compression, which keeps our systems much more energy efficient and much more balanced than anything you could do with a compressor system. This is our state-of-the-art kitchen at Van Ness, our food science lab, which has 3 components, a commercial kitchen, a teaching kitchen, and a food demonstration kitchen. And we had Chef Mendelssohn harvesting greens from the roof and making pizza here. How's that? And it was a very popular event for our students. This is one of our farmers markets. And Rudy Arredondo and I, we collaborate very closely on our farmers markets. We're on our 3rd one now. Rudy, thank you for your partnership. So for us, it's not about should it be urban or rural. It has to be both. And it's really much more about a collaboration of what do we do where. And maybe we can do highly perishable stuff in urban centers and the less perishable stuff out in the rural spaces. This is our East Capitol urban farm at the intersection of Southern Avenue and East Capitol Street, right across the street from the Capitol Heights Metro. We have a 6-tank commercial-size aquaponics system there, and we look forward to handing that over to our first entrepreneurs in the neighborhood. This is one of our groups from Maya Angelou schools that comes down regularly to help us with our community gardens. We have 60 raised bed gardens there and a research area for urban agriculture and an education area for the kids. And because at East Capitol we don't have a kitchen, okay, so we bring in the food truck to do food demonstrations and nutrition education out of our food truck, another proud purchase of recently. And this is an interesting rain garden, isn't it? Anyone recognize this? This is rice. So we try to use food plants also as rain garden plants. And so we're successfully growing rice in the District of Columbia as a rain garden plant. We also have a training program with TC Water where we train people in green infrastructure. This is our food hub at Bertie Bacchus in Ward 5 on South Dakota Avenue. We have 3 big hoop houses there, an aquaponic system, a hydroponic system, and a native plant nursery. So now we're moving from agriculture into horticulture to improve also native plants in the district. And this is another hydroponic system that we have out there. And I'm almost done. This is our latest food hub at P.R. Harris on Livingston Avenue in Ward 8. And if you went there today, you'd see 2 hoop houses up, one with a hydroponic system and one with an aquaponic system. And we intend to do raised bed gardens and so forth in this growing season. So urban agriculture, as you can see, is comprehensive, and it must encompass the entire food system value chain. It invites business startup at all of these different components of the value chain. It's essential for national security because we're actually running out of arable land. And so it has to be a cooperation between rural and urban spaces. Urban agriculture also improves resilience because if we have catastrophes happen, and they do, and we don't have a food system that can support the majority of where our people live, then we're really in trouble. And urban agriculture improves public health because it brings high quality food to food desert neighborhoods where it's needed most, and it supports ecosystem services such as water percolation, water filtration, but also mitigating heat islands. And last but not least, it improves the aesthetics of our neighborhoods and brings people closer to nature. Because if there's one thing that connects us to nature, it's our food. Thank you for your attention.
We did it! We packed all that information in until 4 o'clock. Thank you to our panelists. So much wisdom there, and we're so appreciative. Let me remind you that if you go to the website, which has all the bios of our illustrious lineup of experts and practitioners, you'll also see the archives of these videos. You can study them, and the PowerPoints will be there, and there'll be links to publications and blogs and videos. So you can just, this is the beginning of this Farm Bill education that we're all taking to the next level. So very quickly, Carolyn Turkley, is she around? She's doing, she's working so hard. I wanted to give her an applause. So, and then Colton Fagundes just walked in. Thank him, and Aaron Matson and Felicia Paul at the door. And one more round of applause for School of the National Service, which was generous, but even more generous was the Berkeley Food Institute. So thank you for Berkeley Food Institute and SIS and Anne.
I just wanted to also add incredibly genuine and important thanks to Garrett for her tremendous leadership and work, and Nina, please come up here.
I still have energy. Do we have energy for the Farm Bill?
Yes.
Okay.
They were an incredible team to put this whole thing together, and we couldn't have done anything like this without them, and the whole team of people, the students involved as well. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much for hosting us and for having.
We have a lot of work to do to cultivate equitable, sustainable, nutritious, delicious food systems. So thank you all. Thanks.